So welcome. It's been a while. It's so great to see all of you and you amazing, wonderful, beautiful souls. And I am here with an amazing, beautiful soul. And Zen, I'm going to have you help me pronounce your, is it DeBrucke?
DeBrucke.
DeBrucke. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was a I don't know, French or something.
It's Dutch. It's a little more on the German side. It's more DeBrucke. It's not actually DeBrucke.
DeBrucke.
Yeah, but
Okay.
but DeBrucke in the United States, like from Brooklyn. I jumped over DeBrucke.
I jumped over the brook.
Yeah.
And so Zen is the founder of Smart Soul Academy, and this is an amazing academy because it makes accessible globally her seminal work on the international or the internal guidance system. And I'm guessing that's a spin on the GPS. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what made her an international sensation. And what's also amazing about Zen is that she's a member of the illustrious Transformational Leadership Council created by Jack Canfield. And the story behind that is pretty good. I'm looking forward to hearing you share about how that happened. And anyway, that unites many world top personal growth luminaries. And Zen has worked with over 40,000 people, including training 4,000 master students on the nuances of how to recognize and act on the messages of their IGS to achieve a peak life in alignment with their life purpose. So if it's okay with you, Zen, I would like to just springboard right off of there because I really want to hear your story about how you, so to speak, stumbled upon the IGS and just maybe sharing with us a little background on what that's all about.
I'd love to. I had a really challenging childhood, abusive verbally and physically. And then outside the home, there was some sexual abuse that happened with people that I was left with. And then my house was kind of like a little Peyton place, you know. Dad was sleeping with mom's best friend and they divorced and he married her. And my mom was heartbroken. And my brother got hit by a car and was put in a wheelchair when I was 13. And it was just falling apart constantly. And I had a really bad attitude. I was angry. I was bitter, resentful. I was very lucky never to get into drugs or anything crazy, but I sued my parents for emancipation and went on my own at 17 to get away from all the drama, you know.
Wow, that must have taken a lot of courage. That's amazing. I left at 17 too, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's not, you think it's going to be easy because it looks easy, right? And then you get out there and I'm couch surfing, I'm living out of my car at times. I would get a cheap place to live and then I'd get in a fight with the roommate because I had a bad attitude. And finally, and I'd be on the couch, somebody else's couch again. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I remember one time a manager at a restaurant that I was working at as a dishwasher gave me some critique and I got super upset and quit and walked down the street thinking they were going to chase me down because I was super efficient and a good dishwasher. Well, dishwashers are a dime a dozen, right? Nobody came running after me. Imagine that. Wow.
Well, that sounds kind of typical for a 17-year-old though, right? Like,
yes, exactly. So I went through a few years of this and I had a group of friends. I actually was a good friend and pleasant, but I had these issues. And so they gave me a cassette tape in 1993, my one friend. It was the Abraham Hicks, and she was channeling questions. And
this was at 17? Or how old were you
at this point? I was 22, 23.
Okay. Yeah. Good time to be exposed to that, right?
That's awesome. Exactly. And she gave it to me because she wanted me to know I was creating my own reality with the law of attraction and all of that. But what really hit me is there was like 5 minutes in this cassette tape. I wish I still had it, but there was like 5 minutes in this cassette tape where she talked about that every human being has an internal guidance system. And when your thinking is aligned with what's going to create your most happiness and the most successful life, you feel an expanded feeling in the body. And when your thinking is creating what you absolutely 100% don't want, you have a tightness in the body. And there was something, I must have rewound that 80 times because I didn't get it. but I knew there was something there. You know what I mean? When you know something's there for you, you're like, God, what is this, right? And I finally realized that I felt that tightness every time I ran out of a job or lost a roommate situation or any of that, right? And so I went on a quest to figure it out, because I called them first and they just said, we don't have any curriculum. We just, whatever comes through, comes through. And that's the way it is right now. And I was like, okay. So I went to the library and I was looking. I went like 3 days in a row. I was looking and looking. This is 93. And their librarian finally said, what is it that you're looking for? You're all over the library. And I said, I explained to her. And she goes, it sounds like what you're talking about is anxiety. And I was like, huh. So then I started researching anxiety and what it feels like. And over the course of the next 10 years, I really decoded it. I used it to go back and finish my high school diploma. I started going to community college. I got my degree from UC Davis in foreign policy. I had an import-export company. And this is like a short period of time. We're talking like 6 years, 7 years, that I was taking 21 units the entire year at Davis to get through quickly, because it's in blocks.
So why?
So 0 to 6 is this much. Yeah.
Can I stop you? So what did you study again? What was it?
How this internal, at school?
Yeah.
Or the internal guidance? I studied foreign policy.
Yeah. So what inspired that? Especially, that's interesting.
It is interesting. My dad and I were not close, but I always wanted to impress him. And he was impressed by powerful people. So my path that I thought would be great for me is if I went to school and I got my degree in foreign policy, and then I studied Mandarin Chinese. I wanted to go to law school in China and represent American corporations on Chinese soil, and eventually work my way into being given the ambassador position to China. That was my goal.
Okay.
I know. And here's the funny part.
That's very interesting, right? I guess, especially in light of what's happening in the world now, but.
No, and so what happened is my dad and I became friends during my college years. And my mom passed away. She committed suicide when I was 23. And over the course of those years, I became friends with my dad. And I lost all desire to follow that path anymore. I just wasn't motivated. And I didn't realize it was because I was trying to impress my dad. And and then also in studying China, I couldn't represent anyone that was doing business with China, because I found out all the underbelly stuff that was going on while I was researching China. Talked to Chinese students that were on campus. We'd be in the middle of the quad at UC Davis, in the middle of the grass. There's no one around. And I'd say, what is it really like in China? And they would look around and they go, I can't talk to you about that. I said, you're in America in the middle of a grass field. And they said to me, they're everywhere and my family will be punished.
Yep.
They're terrible.
Well, when you experience something like that, it really hits home. And I do believe that more and more people are starting to awaken to what that means. But that gives me chills when I hear that. And I had sort of a similar experience. I actually lived in Prague.
Love Prague. I love Prague. Yeah.
And I lived there, though, just after the wall had fallen. So they were transitioning from communism to capitalism. And being there is a whole story in itself. But I had this one experience with this girl that's all she knew. She grew up that way. And she was very emotionally young, right? Yeah. Not age-wise, but emotionally very young, because she had lived under this communist rule for so long and had never left her own country because they weren't allowed to. So anyway, this is about you, but it's profound when you have these experiences, right? That
I was in Prague too at that time.
Oh wow!
Where all the buses and everything, all the trolleys were free, and because they hadn't figured out their systems yet. And I ended up doing costumes for the first American play done out of Santa Barbara in Prague, and the parties were fantastic. I remember the nightlife was really good.
It's a beautiful place for
Oh,
sure.
oh, I loved
Amazing
it.
place.
Yeah, I had a favorite cafe under a willow tree on the river, and it was a really exciting.
Oh,
And I talked to a lot of people about what it was like to be there during that time, and it really affected me too. And it made me love America. I bought a
yeah.
one-way ticket to Amsterdam with a girlfriend, and we worked as immigrant labor all the way down into Egypt for a year, and
How
I learned a lot.
awesome.
And then I came
Yeah.
home, I realized how good we had it.
Yeah. I'm getting chills because I mean, in light of everything that's happening in the world right now, again, I do think that more and more people are awakening to that.
Me too.
But I think it's also important to have those other experiences and see other cultures and be able to experience it and talk to people that have lived it. Absolutely, at least for me, the same thing. Like I am so grateful. I mean, we're so blessed that we've been born here, and yeah,
I think, and also people don't realize. I met a guy. I was working on boats in Eilat on the Red Sea for a while, doing as a instructor. And there's all these boats, and there's all these people that are from other countries working there. And there's this one guy who's about 35, and he was from Ireland, and he had been a part of the IRA. Is that right? IRA? Yeah. And he got drunk one night, really drunk, Irish drunk, and he was crying, like bawling, because he could never go home. He's technically a criminal. And it was a whole story. It wasn't as bad as it would seem. But he said, you don't understand when you can't ever go home and be comfortable because you know all the customs, all the language, all the looks on people's faces, what they mean, you know, how to communicate, how to do things. He said, I'll never really be home ever again because everything is so foreign. And that hit me so hard of like, and I know when I got back after that year, it was like, you know, I remember being really excited of having a place to put my toothbrush that wasn't going to go anywhere else. We're just going to stay home, you know, because I've been traveling so much.
yeah,
So anyways, I agree with you. It's important for people to realize that we need to take care of this place, the United States. And I know there's a lot of foreign listeners here, and you need to take care of your communities and your countries as well, because this is home, and you know how to behave and how to act and how to feel right. And you know all the social cues, and it's just unbelievably important to take care of your home, stand up for it, and love it.
yeah. Yeah. And, you know, on a soul level, though, like we are sovereign beings. That is a choice, right? I think,
Yes.
regardless of the politics of it, like we have a choice to be free. So, yeah, I'm gonna cry.
I know, me too. This is touching, you know, that sentimentality, and I was almost going to cry a minute ago, you know, that sentimentality, it shows that there's a place where you care about every single human being having a choice to be free. It's
Yeah.
important. We all need to really hold on to that. Even, yeah.
Yeah, so let's put that back with the work that you're doing and using our internal guidance system to really live out our purpose, because I think it's important. The more we know what our purpose is and the more we actually be that in the world, I think that is part of what will transform the planet.
I think it's absolutely intended. I think this is, and we'll talk about it, but this is the next evolution, I believe, in our human species to get us where we want to be, is this internal guidance system. And so what happened was I was researching this on my own, and it was really hard because our mind believes things are true. Whatever's in there, we get programmed between the ages of 0 and 7 with our culture and our family and everything. And then what happens is that stuff gets stuck in there as truth, as fact, and it isn't necessarily true or fact. And so I'd give an example. Do you know what color a yield sign is?
I think it used to be yellow, but did they change that?
Yeah, so it's yellow. And everywhere I go in the US and even Canada, they see this yellow and black yield sign in their minds. And this is what's funny is it actually was in 1971, Congress voted to change the yellow yield sign to red and white to make it more internationally standard. By 1974, all yellow yield signs were taken out of commission. Okay. Now I go out and I speak in front of thousands of people every year, and 90 to 95% of the audience will say yellow and black. Now, how could that be if it's been gone that long? And the reason is it's because it's on t-shirts, it's on billboards, it's on book covers. My son, when he was 2 in 2016, saw this frozen snowman guy who did the voice dancing around Sesame Street with a yellow and black yield sign singing a song. So now even he in his sponge-like state has that yellow and black yield sign in his mind. Yeah. The problem is we don't have an updating system in it. Well, we do now, but we didn't have an updating system in our minds where when we pass a red and white yield sign, it updates that information. In fact, everybody who's listening and anybody who's listening to the recording are jumping on their phones in Wikipedia and trying to prove me wrong because their mind is telling them it's absolutely fact that it's yellow and black.
Yeah, is it red with a line through it or something?
It's red with it's red with a white border, and it says
okay
white across it.
Yeah. I don't think it's probably the consciousness, right? Like you probably see them all the time, but don't even notice it. Right?
Yeah.
Because
I
mean,
exactly.
I would have only been 2 years old when they got rid of them.
I know. And teenagers will still do it. It's interesting. It's wild. And they're not out there. But the thing is this, we have these about who we are, what we look like. We get told things when you're a kid, you're a klutz, right? You're shy, you're too loud, right? Other rules like how we watch mom and dad behave in their marriage. And then those rules come up and we recreate them in our own marriages and relationships until we take it on and grow out of them. Hell, I see kids that look exactly like their parents. It was so funny. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and it's a little boy. He's probably 3. He's working on a toy car, and he's going to the engine and he's futzing with some things, and he steps back and then he looks and he tries to, then he goes to the engine, and then he goes, I know his dad does that. Trying to figure out how to fix the car, and he's watched him. Right? This isn't something he necessarily knows how to do, right? He's just something he's watched. So what happens is I believe, this is my belief, that we have a blueprint, each and every one of us, that's unique. And that blueprint is about what lessons we're here to learn as a soul, but it's also about who we're supposed to contribute with, how we're supposed to give our gifts, who else we are supposed to help get past the finish line beautifully. And these programs, these yellow yield signs, they get in the way. And so I believe we were given in our body, because I did not create this, I decoded it. When you feel a lump in the throat, a tightness in the chest, or a sick, hard ball-like feeling in the pit of your stomach, your IGS is activated. It is telling you that something in your thinking is not true or not going to happen. I know that sounds like a crazy statement, but it's like the yellow yield sign. And so when you learn how to access, when you feel the tightness, there's practices you can do, switch your mind into new thinking, and this instantly releases. And you're back on the right track. But the really cool thing, Cynthia, is that release starts a new neural pathway in your brain away from your old programming. So I'll give you an example. My mom was always thinking that our neighbors were talking about us. If 2 people were standing in their front yard, or their cars were parked side by side and they were talking, she instantly thought that they were talking about us. That was her first go-to, and she got it from her mom. Because her mom was kind of insane, bipolar, right? I picked that up. So I'd walk through a room at a party, and I would think that someone was mad at me.
They're talking about me. They're talking about me.
Exactly. And then I would immediately go, what did I do? What did I do wrong? I'd go right into this shame spiral, and nothing was wrong. And one time I walked into a party, and I was sitting in the living room on the couch, and a good friend of mine walked in, and she went, and then walked right past me and left and went to the kitchen. And about an hour, I sat there completely lost, completely not even paying attention to what was being said to me. What did I do to her? Walk into the kitchen, and as I'm coming up to her to be like, what's wrong? What did I do? Blah, 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 right? She goes, Zen, is that you? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, I left my glasses in my other purse. I can't see anybody. Will you walk around the party with me? She was blind. She was squinting at me because she was blind. But my programming, my programming immediately went to this thing. Well, I'm proud to say I don't have that anymore. these little tiny things that cause us suffering, the head noise that won't go away, the bills, problems with our kids, the fight with our husband or our wife, stuff that's going on at work with a coworker that you don't understand, that's causing this tight sensation and your mind just goes haywire. That's all old programming, and we have a system to reprogram that brain, and those things that cause us suffering will evaporate. They'll go away.
That's awesome. I think that's part of the journey, right? Let's clear that stuff up. What do we need to do to clear it up?
And much of the stuff that's causing us to be disconnected from each other are things that we have in our head that are not true or not going to happen. If what's happening in the United States and around the world is people are acting out from their closing sensation. And it's like a compass, right? And so I like to think of east or west as neutral. Due north is super expanded. I'm in my passion. I'm creating music. I'm dancing. It's art. It's the new business idea you can't stop thinking about that you're totally in love with. Due south is terror and panic. And it's like literally like when you're on the way to the airport and you think you forgot your ID and you go like that. That is a deep closing. That means you didn't. Or I had I said something bad last night. Did I, that means you didn't. Nobody took it the way you're taking it. You have your ID, seriously. And so that's that. And then it goes up to where you're neutral. And when you learn to use your IGS, you spend most of your time just happy and just neutral. And if you have guidance, if you have a thought that's taking you away from your blueprint, you get a little opening or a little closing. You do a practice, you get back into neutral, and you do it along. There's so much to this. I am shocked at how powerful this is and how much it does for us as human beings to keep us happy, strong, safe, and creating exactly what we're here to create for ourselves and others. It's amazing.
Well, it's exciting, right? So is that what your program teaches people, how to get more tuned in with that?
Yep. I teach people all the practices that they need to be able to pivot about anything that they have going on in their lives. And what happens is you just don't have that trauma and drama anymore where, you get closed and you just keep following that tight feeling and making mistakes and going into your triggers. And I call them stress themes, where these are the things that always stress you out. Like my thing about some of the students' big things is if someone doesn't call them back, they get worried and concerned about it. And they can't stop thinking about, why haven't they called me back? It's day 3, I called them. Then the person finally calls them back and they're out of town or something happens. But that 3 days is like torture. They're like, I don't have that anymore. I'm like, check in. Are they gonna? Yeah, everything's fine. And then they just go on with their lives. The head noise stops.
So can I flip that around and ask you a question? So I have a friend that, she might message me and then I might message her back, but I missed a call, and so like a day later she'd be like, "Are you mad at me?"
Yep.
And I know she's going into her whatever her pattern is, and I notice it, and I'm aware that it's a thing. But I'm wondering, like, what could you say or ask someone to help them to reopen themselves so that they're not recreating that? Is there something that you can do with the people around you?
Yes, but you can't. So number one, the biggest thing to do is to have you learn to use your IGS, because then what happens is we start having opening conversations. And what that looks like is you'll stop in the middle of a situation and you'll feel a tightness, you'll fix your own thinking, and then you open back up. And what I've found is opening begets opening. And so you want to be able to have this conversation while you're open, because then her opening will begin. But it would be something like, you know what? I would love to just let you know that if I'm mad at you, I will immediately let you know. I promise I'll never hold it from you. And number 2, there's a thing where if I don't call back within 24 or 48 hours because I got a lot going on, you immediately think that I'm mad at you, and I don't want you to suffer that way.
I like that.
About me.
I don't want you to suffer that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I know that it's just pain, right? That somebody's inflicting on themselves. Right?
And you love her and you don't want that. So just do me a favor and always assume that I am not mad at you, that I still love you. And I will make the commitment that if there is something wrong, you'll be the first to know as fast as I know it myself.
That's good. I like it.
And then the next time she's going to do it again, because it's a program and these things are habits and they're really hard. Most people don't know how to work with their thoughts. That's one of the things you learn is you get to know yourself beautifully in these programs and intimately. The next time it happens, you just be patient and you go, hey, we made an agreement. I always love you and you'll be the first to know.
Hey.
Stop it. Don't do that to yourself. And it's about kindness and generosity and compassion and empathy. And that's one part of what the IGS gives you is you get to work through all your own stuff. And it's private, it's personal. You know, it's like little 15-minute lectures every 3 or 4 days. You get a new little practice. You try it on. You get the openings and openings and openings. So, and you're working with your own stuff that's programs that you're like, stuff you wouldn't even tell people you think. But your IGS and you work on it together. And I think it's this divine presence, really. And what happens is you start realizing we're all in these closings. Everybody's feeling this suffering. And you don't want anybody to go through that anymore. So you do become more generous, more forgiving, more relaxed, more joyous. You know, somebody does something wrong and you're like, sweetheart, it's fine. Relax. It's good. I'm okay. You know what I mean? You just don't go there anymore.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. You want to do a little exercise real quick and feel your IGS for yourself?
I didn't know if you had, I think you have a couple of quick tools, right? So yeah,
yes.
Let's try one.
Okay. So in the beginning, you have to be connected to your body. As you get the practice within 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, you don't have to do this particular thing anymore. So everybody who's out there can do this with us. So Cynthia, go ahead and just close your eyes and feel the bottom of your feet, the soles of your feet on the ground. Could be in shoes or not. And you'll feel they're starting to tingle a little bit and get warm. Like they're a little more alive now that you're paying attention to them. And then while you're paying attention to your feet, also pay attention to the palms of your hands. And you'll feel tingly again. And now your feet and hands are tingly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 statements. You're going to let them just roll through your mind like a cloud does through the sky. Don't hang on to it. Don't answer it. Don't do anything. And notice how you feel between your throat and solar plex area. The solar plex is where the ribs come together in the rib cage. Hands and feet, keep your awareness there. And here's the first statement. I do not have an internal guidance system. Notice any sensation between your throat and your stomach. I do not have an internal guidance system. Now here's the second statement. Go ahead and close your eyes, feet and hands. I do have an internal guidance system. Notice anything different between your throat and your upper solar plex. I do have an internal guidance system. I do have an internal guidance system. Wiggle your toes, open your eyes. What happened? First one where you said, I do not have an internal guidance system. What did you feel? Did you experience anything?
Sorry?
Did you experience?
Yeah, I felt it down. Yeah, just below my solar plexus. Like, right, that's not true.
Like a clenching feeling or?
Yeah, just like a maybe more sinking feeling.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yep, sinking is one of it. And then on the second one, what happened?
Yeah, I felt it higher. Like,
did it open up? Did it open?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the first one we call closing, and it shows up different for different people based on their programming. This is something that's only related to your thoughts. So if you have a tight feeling and you're thinking there's something wrong with that person, what you're thinking is not true. If you think there's something wrong with that person and you get an expanded knowing feeling, if it's expanded, there is something wrong with that person. It's the opposite of what we've always thought. It's part of the reason why we have so many people fighting for what they believe in, but they're enraged and they're mean and they're picketing and they're angry and they're yelling and or censoring or wanting to, like abolish everything. It's because this feeling, as they're thinking things that aren't true, is getting tighter and tighter and worse and worse. And what people think is that means that they need to protect themselves. They need to protect other people. They need to fight harder. It's the opposite. You fight when you're open. And it's not about like I've discovered that emotions can be our programs too. How our mom reacted to something ends up being how we reacted to something, and same with fathers. We start realizing this in our late 20s and early 30s. We're like, man. And what happens is like you can have anger that's opening, and you can have anger, the emotion of anger that's closing. Closing anger creates war. Opening anger creates change, like Martin Luther King and Gandhi.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because that energy is more in your heart, right? Your heart area, at least for me it was, and is like when I kind of tune into this too. And when you're coming from your heart and your mind, right, the frequency from your heart is actually more powerful than your mind. So that makes a lot of sense.
And your mind has a lot of yield signs, a lot of things that have been programmed or that we've learned that aren't true for us. And so this is a very personalized system. And what I've discovered is that, and I'm going to give a practice to your listeners, you can go through your day correcting that program in an instant. And so the changes in your life, like me going from a dropout high school student who emancipated and couldn't keep a job, to a successful tech with a $6 million company by the time I was 29, and then moving on and becoming a transformational leader and developing this body of work and traveling, all the stuff that I've done has been stopping in the moment when I feel this little closing and going, wait a minute, what am I thinking? And then moving on. So doing the practice. And what I've found is frustration, irritation, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, fear, impatience, when we're rushing, like we're late and we're rushing, that rushing sensation is always closing. This is just some. Guilt is always closing, Cynthia. Guilt is not true ever. Remorse is. Notice how we don't do anything when we're guilty.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I should be spending more time. I should have worked out today. I should be feeding my kids something besides frozen pizza. But we don't change. It is a program about what is making us good or bad as a human. And it's a lie. It's not true. Remorse is where you actually are like, oh my God, I've got to fix this. And it's opening. And you go and you make amends and you apologize.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you try to fix it. And so we have all these programs inside of us, and these things I've been untangling out of our human experience and creating practices. So when you're irritated, it's always with a person that you think won't change. Frustration is always with a thing or a system that you believe won't change, your mind believes won't change, and they will. It's not true that they can't change. And so you do the practice, and all of a sudden you and your spouse are getting along better. You and your estranged kid are getting along better. The person at work, right? And so even yourself, being irritated with yourself, you're thinking that you're never going to change. And you do the practice, you find the opening, and then you're no longer irritated and you see the way through. And it's like pulling a tapestry string. The whole situation that you thought was never going to be different just goes and it's gone. It's extraordinary. And I think we need that speed right now on our planet. We need things to unravel quickly and come back together.
We do. So obviously this is your soul purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And also to come out, and my second soul purpose, which I'm getting the courage to step into, is to come out and talk about the issues that are happening on the planet from a place of opening, so that people can start thinking, and not from a place of taking a stand, but taking a position on where humanity can and has the right to go if it wants to.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that if we are coming from that open place, like the way you're describing it, is that we have a choice on, whether you want to call it a timeline or what we want to co-create. And if we can do that collaboratively, it's infinite. It's amazing what we could, right? Rather than focusing on, oh my God, look at all this terrible stuff. Because if you look at it from that closed space, it's horrible, and it's right. Like I can understand how some people are caught up in this fear and fight and in that energy. So
I think, and there's so much, like I said, there's so much to this internal guidance system, but I'm Christian. I've studied all kinds of different things. And for me, it just comes back to that. But this is in all wisdom traditions, like the text for everything. I've seen the same thing. And it's that fear is the opposite of love, right? And what we're talking about when we have that closing, it is fear. All of the things I listed of overwhelm and frustration and irritation and anxiety are all coming from fear. When you go right down to the core of what that is, frustration is fear that this situation will never change. Irritation is fear that this person will never change, right? And when it comes down to it. And so it's interesting to me because as more and more fear is being created on the planet, it's taking us away from our divine center and God, in my opinion. And this tool, when you correct and come back, and you follow the openings, you're coming back into this divine alignment, and you're creating a real new, fresh energy that humans haven't been able to create and sustain in a long time, maybe ever. And so I think this is really why there's a lot of fear mongering going on, because it actually takes us away from being able to make the right choices for ourselves and our community and those around us. Because this is like a ripple effect, right? I have this theory of 100 million reeds, like reeds in a pond. And everybody who's learning to use their IGS or uses it already, because there's lots of people who've already figured this out. I'm not the only one. When somebody there's a pond and there's all these reeds, and behind them is all the pollywogs and the little fishes and the little babies, right? Somebody throws a big giant boulder into the middle, that ripple effect goes out. And it hits the reeds, and when it hits the reeds, the area right behind the reed becomes peaceful, and that's where all the little creatures hide, and they wait for the turmoil to get over. But when somebody studies this, they're becoming that reed. So when somebody honks the horn because you didn't get off the light fast enough, and you go, whatever your programming response is, it's still there for 30 or 40 minutes, and then you go to you don't smile at the Starbucks person like you normally would and say hi.
It could be, right. It's that, ricochet effect. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you?
No, I was just saying that this is how we do it. It's just us. It really does only take one person taking this on, and things begin to change really quickly, because you still walk in and have conversations from this place of openness, and it's grounded too. Like I've made deep change from a place of anger that's opening, and I was listened to and things moved. So it's not just this airy fairy woo woo thing. No, it's like sometimes you open to have hard conversations. You open to be really strict about something, but it's opening, it's right.
Yeah, I like that, because I worked with somebody for a long time that's a transformational, I don't remember.
Leadership counsel?
No, not through that, but anyway, what I was going to say is I remember I had this experience where I almost shocked myself, because I was very reactive. I mean, for me, it seemed reactive. But when we broke it down, it was like, that was what needed to happen in that time, right? Like that's part of what had to happen for that person. And so it's not always bad, like you said, it's not just particular emotions are bad. It's from what place we're coming from, I guess, right?
Yeah, and being able to suss that out and understand it is way easier using the system of actually experiencing it than trying to use your mind. Well, should I do this? Should I do that? This, what about that? It's so hard. But when you feel it, you're like, nope, this is the direction.
Yeah.
Move forward with complete confidence and hold that line, because the second that you start to like kind of move into a place where you're like, okay, I'm going to cave, you shut down, you tighten up. You're like, wait a minute. No, I'm staying with this because this is what's true for me now.
So I really love this and would like to continue, but we do need to get going here. So what I'd like to do is, where do they go to find more?
Okay, real quick. Let's give them one practice, and then I'll tell them where to go. Okay.
All right. So perfect.
First of all, whenever you feel a lump in your throat, a tightness in your chest, or a sick feeling, or for those of you who are not connected to your body very well, anytime you're irritated, frustrated, guilty, anxiety, or any fear, just those for now, stop in the moment and say, I am closed. That means what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen. And that's a very important statement. I am closed. That means what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen. What you're going to feel is you're going to feel a lightening. You're going to feel a release. And what's important about that is we've just started connecting your mind to understanding that this responds to its thinking. Do that for 2 days. You'll notice that like 50% of your stress will be gone. You're going to just come, you're going to feel good. You're going to get energy. You're going to sleep better. Within 2 days, it's going to be different if you do that. Now you can go to mind, M-I-N-D, spark, SPARK.com, mymindspark.com. Sign up on our email list, and I will give you that practice, which I just gave you in case you were driving or you couldn't write it down. I'll have a video there with that practice and a little more explanation. And then I'll give you the second practice, which is how to find openings when it's really tough. So that way you can have a good chunk. If you just did those two things and you didn't come study with me, your life will be so much different and so much better. But if you want to study with me, I'm at Smart Soul, SOUL, like we have a soul, academy.com. And I have a membership. It's $47 a month, $97 with coaching, and you have access to 13 programs and possibly access to me. It's really easy. But first do the mymindspark.com so you can actually really see the difference that this makes and how personalized it is.
And I'll put that in the description, mymindspark.com and
Smart Soul
Soul Academy.
Thank you.
I was going to share the screen of it, but I'm having a tech glitch again. So, this was wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to add in conclusion, or?
Just that I've loved looking at you. You're gorgeous, and what a great interview. And we cover things I've never really gotten to cover in an interview, and it's just been lovely, Cynthia. Thanks for having me.
I would definitely love to continue that conversation and how we can continue to transform on a planetary level.
Anytime.
So.
I'd love to collaborate or be back, whatever You'd like to do, just reach out and I'm in.
Awesome. Okay, sounds good.